Will the doctor finally provide the answers Hoai Ca and Tony have been desperately searching for? Despite all of Hoai Ca's efforts to teach him, Tony is still struggling with language development. With a heart full of concern, Hung decides to take Tony to the hospital, hoping to find a new path forward for him. Will this family get the good news they've been waiting for? Or will they face even more challenges? Tune in to this episode to find out what happens next. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the upcoming emotional and surprising episodes. Hung and Hoai Ca took Tony to the hospital together, their hearts filled with worry but also hope. Despite all their efforts to help Tony learn, he still couldn't read or write like the other kids, even though he was old enough to start school. Hoai Ca looked at her son, her eyes filled with concern. She knew this was the first step toward understanding the cause of his struggles and helping him build a better future. When they arrived at the hospital, they walked into the waiting area where other parents sat waiting for their turn. Hung guided Hoai Ca to the reception desk, where they were asked to take a number. Hoai Ca held the small paper in her hand, feeling a mix of nervousness and heaviness rise within her. Even though she knew this was the right decision, she couldn't shake off the fear of what might come next. Hung sat next to her, staring at the number in her hand. His hands tightened, not because he was worried about Tony's treatment, but because he couldn't stop thinking about the precious time they'd already lost. Hoai Ca felt the same anxiety building inside her. She knew Tony needed special support to develop his language skills, but she wasn't sure if the doctor could help. The minutes ticked by the sound of the clock on the wall, making the room feel even more still and quiet. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, their names were called. Hung and Hoai Ca stood up, taking Tony into the examination room. There was still some nervousness, but a sense of relief washed over them. This was the first important step in finding answers to the challenges Tony faced. No matter what the outcome, they were ready to face it together for their family and for Tony's future. The room was quiet as expected in a hospital setting. The doctor, a middle-aged woman with a calm and professional demeanor, smiled as she greeted them. Hung and Hoai Ca sat next to Tony, who seemed curious, looking around without showing any signs of worry. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he could sense the tension in the air. The doctor began with a soft, friendly tone to help ease the atmosphere before starting her examination. "Hello, I'm Dr. Thao. What brings you and Tony in today?" Her warm voice immediately put Hoai Ca a bit at ease. Hoai Ca glanced at Hung, as if waiting for him to speak first, but then she took a breath and replied, "Tony still can't speak clearly, and he's having trouble with reading and writing. We're concerned about his language development." Dr. Thao made notes about Tony's condition, her eyes full of understanding. "Thank you for sharing that. I'll examine Tony to see if there's a language delay or if there might be another underlying cause." She turned her attention to Tony and began guiding him through some simple tests. "Tony, can you point to the parts of your body?" she asked, trying to keep the mood light. Tony stared at her for a moment before pointing to his eyes. But when asked about his nose or mouth, he seemed unsure and didn't know what to do. Dr. Thao didn't show any disappointment. She simply made a note and smiled gently. "It's okay, Tony. I understand. Let's move on." she said, making the room feel a little more relaxed. The doctor continued with other tests, asking Tony to repeat simple words like mama and baba. But Tony only managed to mimic them awkwardly, without much clarity. Both Hoai Ca and Hung could feel the weight of the moment. They had known about Tony's language challenges, but seeing it firsthand made their concern even more real. Dr. Thao looked at her notes before turning back to Hoai Ca and Hung, her expression full of empathy. Tony shows signs of a language delay. However, we'll need further evaluations through tests and special treatment. I'll recommend some early intervention strategies to help him develop more effectively. Hung felt the heaviness settle in his chest, unable to hide his worry. He looked at Tony, who sat there, still not fully understanding what was going on, but his innocent gaze made Hung's heart ache. Hoai Ca's throat tightened as she squeezed Hung's hand, trying to stay calm. Dr. Thao continued, "We'll also need to check Tony's hearing and possibly do some psychological tests to better understand his development. But don't worry too much. This is just the first step, and we'll work together to find the best solution for Tony." Hoai Ca let out a quiet sigh, a mix of relief and lingering anxiety. She looked at Tony, then at Hung. While there were still many unknowns, at least they had started on a new path, a journey to find answers for their son's struggles. Hung gently patted her shoulder, reassuring her, "We'll do everything we can to help him. We're not alone on this journey." After leaving the doctor's office, Hung, Hoai Ca and Tony walked down the hospital hallway, the results slip in their hands, heavy with worry. While the doctor had reassured them that Tony's condition wasn't beyond improvement, the results still left them with an unspoken tension. Hung couldn't stop thinking about what the doctor had said, the tests they needed to do, and the early intervention plans to help Tony. But in the back of his mind, a constant worry lingered. Would Tony be able to catch up like the other kids? Hoai Ca walked beside him, her gaze quietly fixed on the result, slipper hands clutching it tightly without saying a word. She knew this was just the first step of a long journey, but the unease she felt was impossible to shake. Tony walked beside her, his steps light and untroubled. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but every so often his innocent eyes would glance up at her, sensing the quiet tension in the air. They approached the checkout counter where a clerk was waiting. Hung handed over the result slip and insurance card, his mind still restless. The weight of worrying about costs, about whether they could afford to continue supporting Tony, only made the moment feel even heavier. Though insurance would cover part of it, he couldn't help but worry about the unexpected expenses. After paying, they moved to the pharmacy, where rows of medicine filled the shelves. Hoai Ca scanned the prescriptions the doctor had written. She gently guided Hung to the section for children's medication. Hung could see the concern in her eyes, and he knew she was doing everything she could to make sure Tony received the best care. He felt the pressure of not being able to help his wife carry all the burdens, but he understood, no matter how hard it got, they had to keep moving forward. After collecting the necessary medicine, they headed to the register. Standing there, waiting to pay, they didn't speak. The silence stretched on heavy with emotion. Tony stood between them, holding a small toy his mom had bought for him, his innocent eyes unaware of the weight of the moment. But he could feel the love and care surrounding him. Once they finished paying, the three of them stepped out of the pharmacy and made their way to the exit. Though this was just the beginning of their search for solutions to Tony's challenges, Hung and Hoai Ca felt a glimmer of hope. They would continue to walk this path together, step by slow, steady step, so their son could overcome any obstacle, and their family could find peace in the days ahead.